Hello everyone and welcome to this PV Tech TechTalk webinar in conjunction with ENACT Systems, where we will be exploring how ENACT's platform enables greater solar and storage sales through leveraging software advantages. My name is Sean Roach and I'll be your host for today's webinar. Joining me is Deep Chakraborty, CEO of ENACT, which operates out of California, and Michael Giorgio, Chief Information Officer of RUBICON Group, which is based in Cape Town, South Africa. The webinar will last around 1 hour and will be an open discussion between myself, Deep and Michael regarding factors impacting load shedding and blackouts from experiences in South Africa and Californian markets. Along with this, we'll also be discussing what may be coming from European and UK markets in light of recent energy supply constraints. We will also examine how this impacts on solar and storage demand as a solution and how deployment of these can be accelerated by leveraging software advantages. After this point, we'll take some audience questions, and you can use the dialog box on your screen to submit those questions. The webinar is also being recorded and will be available on demand via PV Tech shortly. But without any further ado, I think we'll kick off by having a little introduction from the two speakers. So Michael, if you could give a little bit of an overview about what Rubicon does, that would be great.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much, Sean. So Rubicon Group is a solar distributor primarily operating in South Africa and recently now in the UK, although we are still getting our warehousing up in that space. Our primary focus is to understand the full technology journey of our customers. We're primarily a B2B business, so we're focusing on energy, e-mobility, lighting, and building automation, as well as some power solutions in terms of our divisions. We, of course, include renewable energy generation and storage technologies, along with electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And our primary focus is on making sure that all our client journeys, including our EPC and installer partners' needs, are catered for, and ensure that we provide industry-leading technologies and solutions to these customers. This, of course, is then wrapped with software, which we've bundled with these services to ensure that our platform, our software platform, delivers this in a seamless way to our customers, and then, of course, to support their customers on the end of that. Over to you, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And similarly, Deep, I think it'd be helpful if you could get an overview of ENACT, please.
Thank you, Sean. Glad to be here. ENACT Systems offers software as a service for solar as well as storage projects across the world. We focus on buildings, homes, as well as businesses and corporates. And we're active now with thousands of users in 20 plus countries and process over $1 billion of projects per year. Our whole vision has been to really transform that end customer journey. The customer could be a home or business, their ownership and experience of such systems across the world. That's been the driver of our business, and happy to share more.
Thank you, Deep. So I think it'd be useful if we kicked off with Michael. So Michael, could you please tell us a bit about the growth of solar and storage market in South Africa, specifically what's driving this and what does the future look like for the South African market?
Yeah, sure. I think probably the easiest way to reflect this is to start with the problem that we're experiencing. So what is up on the slides at the moment, this graphic is an indication of the hours of national load shedding that we've experienced over the last number of years. That means a blackout in terms of rolling blackouts, showcasing that our energy utility is unable to keep up with the demand that is being required by the country. This is due to various things, including poor maintenance of various plants and various generation facilities. And you can see the picture doesn't look very rosy, and it's obviously escalating at this point. So this, coupled with the grid instability, so if I show you what our grid looks like over the last sort of 2 to 3 years, you can see it's worsened significantly in 2022. And this has, of course, had a massive economic impact on the country, as well as, of course, the inconvenience of having a total blackout over several hours each day. This, of course, coupled with an increasing tariff rate and requests from NERSA, our national energy regulator, to the tune of 33% this year, is putting a lot of pressure on consumers and businesses. And of course, they are looking for solutions to mitigate this. So if we look a little bit further down the track, just in terms of what has been articulated to the market and what has been suggested is going to be required by South Africa, these drivers are suggesting a requirement of 36.8 gigawatts of PV to be installed in the next decade, and that's new PV. And some of the legislation around that has obviously been relaxed to allow for some of this to happen. The first one is, of course, there was previously a 1 megawatt bottleneck that was put in place by NERSA, and that has been lifted as a cap to 100 megawatts of self-generation. That is a significant jump, far more than anyone expected, but given the problems that we're experiencing, it's totally understandable. Of course, utility scale generation is now being opened up for municipalities. That was something that was not available before as well. And given these two changes to these caps, this suggests the following in terms of solar procurement for the next decade: about 2.5 gigawatts for mining procured generation, 4.8 gigawatts for municipal procured generation, 5.7 for large-scale corporate PPAs, and 13.1 gigs of CNI embedded generation. And of course, on the residential side, we're seeing 3.7 gigawatts coming through as the potential that is required. Of course, it is an expensive purchase, but with costs reducing in terms of solar PV panels and modules and storage, of course, this is starting to look quite lucrative, or not lucrative, but it's starting to look quite attractive to consumers, given that the price increases is there. And you can actually see in this graphic what the growth demand is purely in residential over the next decade or so. Over to you, Sean.
Thank you for that, Michael. So I suppose, Deep, it could be also very interesting to hear what is driving solar and storage in the US market and where you see that market headed.
Absolutely. The US is one of the largest markets for solar. I mean, sticking specifically to homes and buildings, almost 3 million homes have solar now in the US. And where I live in California, we have over 1 million homes with solar. And the percentage of homes now getting solar is increasing every year, expected to reach 17% or so penetration by 2031. And the big driver has been, in my last decade of solar here in the country, is the drop in pricing of solar as well as now storage. And that really reduces that friction between the customer's bill and the utility bill. So the ROI for such systems have really improved. In California, where I live, is now 5 years or under. It's possible. That's a big driver. Financing is, of course, driving some of that. But if you look at the last couple of years, I would say the big additional trends that's pushing us forward, one of them is the rapid increase in electric car adoption. Especially this year, we have numbers now coming out last month, 15% of new car sales has been EVs. And the gas prices, of course, are one big driver there. And if you look at their behavior, typically 80% of EV buyers adopt solar within the first year of buying the EV. Once they get the electric bill, they realize that the costs have to be covered better than they thought before. The other big trend we're seeing is the increase in the need for charging on site because of the EV at commercial buildings that require storage as well in many cases. So this is a lift not just for solar, but also for storage in different parts of the country. The other big trend in the US is the unstable grid. So where I live here, our grid is bankrupt for the last 3 years. And in Silicon Valley, of course, we have no power sometimes in our homes. My home had no power last month for 6 hours. Customers are not used to that. They need predictability, both businesses and homes. And that's led to very large share of solar plus storage sales. So 20% of residential buyers now have storage coupled with solar. The government is, of course, incentivizing such transactions through increased tax credits to customers. We're also seeing incentives of different kinds from cities and states. We have a mandate to have, of course, all new homes now with solar in California, and also commercial buildings coming up the same way. The other parts of the country, like New York, has similar mandates to have solar as well. We are seeing increase also in the wildfires and natural disasters in different coastal parts of the country, and this is a global trend. That creates increasing demand for storage as well. even backup storage as a standalone solution with or without solar. And that's been, of course, one of the big drivers this year for storage adoption. Back to you, Sean.
Thank you for that, Deep. So I'm also just wondering, how does ENACT fit into all of this, and what advances does it pose for the US market?
Yeah, so these transactions, we're talking about buildings that would adopt such systems. A typical home, if you look at how these projects get done for a homeowner here in California, we're seeing this is one of the most expensive things they're going to buy in their life after their home and car. So it's a very important purchase for the average homeowner, whether it's a middle class or an upper middle class. We're seeing the driver for these transactions being financial savings. The challenge they face is that it's a very difficult purchase. There's really no transparency in pricing. There's about 7,000 solar companies now in the US that offer such systems, and dozens of different brands, not just for the solar panels, but also for batteries. So trying to figure that out themselves is a challenge. There's no retail store they can buy from. It's all information coming at them online or phone calls or emails. And in all of this, there's really no one assuring them of any outcomes. So it's a difficult purchase. Now, the other side too, if you look at the installers, it's difficult too. I mean, they're being asked to build power plants on buildings. There's no real established supply chain. They're relying on their new distribution partners and getting it all together. The equipment comes from 17 different places across the world and shows up magically on the right day. And then to get to that magic day, it takes months of planning, permits and approvals and documents. So it's a real technical feat to get one project done right. And needless to say, done right with no defects and no issues for 25 years of maintenance and warranty in some cases. So both sides have a very challenging journey. And that's what ENACT really is focusing on through our software. We offer a platform that is really guiding these two sides to work together. It's a two-sided platform, so installers have software tools from ENACT, and so does the homeowner as well. So what we offer, solar installers is really a place to design their projects remotely. So they can start with any address remotely using imaging and design a system on the roof of the building on the ground with clicks on the map and size the system really accurately without having to visit the site. So it's taken away that repeat site visit need, which then leads to also very accurate estimates of generation and savings. So we of course offer all the information, electric rates and pricing. And so the sales process gets a lot more automated. That leads to more rapid information exchange. There's obviously changes in any design and any project, and the customer gets more involved in these interactions now digitally. We're offering customers to a lot more transparency in evaluating the options, and therefore the contracts get done faster with ENACT. Once those are signed, the installer can manage those projects on the same platform in terms of milestones, tracking, and documents, and make sure that these assets that they're creating are in good hands, well documented for years of ownership. It could be a new home buyer, by the way, who takes it over eventually. The customers, of course, also get their own apps to measure the outcomes. So that's a long story, but we're definitely enabling that friction-heavy sales and execution process for solar storage.
Okay, thank you, Deep. So it's very clear on your position within the US market and supporting those decarbonisation efforts. But I'm kind of wondering exactly how does the software platform help the sales and operations team?
Great question. The sales teams of such companies are the drivers of businesses. We're talking small and medium companies, 7,000 of them in the country, in the US, and more outside the US. And the biggest benefit of using a platform like ENACT is the automation we bring in the sales process. So being able to design quickly, be a lot more responsive to the customer's requests, and being able to take care of that entire journey with trust and transparency. That's the big driver we are seeing. And of course, a lot of companies have no software tools, and the difference in the responsiveness is really the big driver for adoption of ENACT for sales teams. Operations teams too, who are delivering such projects, they need systems to make sure that the data is in the single place, is accessible to the whole team. There's lots of handovers from one person to the other, and it takes 3 to 6 months to get these done. So the data being in one place for the team is a real big driver. A single source of truth, an all-in-one platform, if you will, that helps them manage these long projects successfully, especially commercial ones that take sometimes a year to 2 years to get done right. And finally, the customer, they're now able to see everything in one place, not just for their purchase, but their ownership. So they can kind of understand the benefits for years to come financially now in terms of the ROI, which was not possible before.
Okay, thank you. So Michael, are you seeing that in the South African context? And also I'd like to know a bit more about your thoughts on what more can a distribution platform do? Sorry, before you answer that though, Michael, just a reminder to the audience that you can submit questions using the question tab. If you want to ask either of our presenters anything, I can see a load coming in at the moment, which is great, but that's just a little reminder for you. Sorry to interrupt, Michael, I'll hand over to you now.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Absolutely echo what Deep has said, particularly in the South African context. What we're seeing is a massive demand, and that demand is generally coming from end users that are not actually very sure about what they want. They don't actually know where to go and who to turn to. So what happens when you wrap this kind of software into your existing distributor network, which is what we have done in our instance, we actually start seeing a couple of benefits coming through. So the first is, of course, bringing trust and reputable products to the market. In our case, we make sure that the engineered solutions that go out are backed by the right products and by the right technical team to support those products. As Deep said, 7,000 installers in the US. We also have thousands of installers in South Africa. You could take a solution from one of them, not know what you're getting, and in a year's time, they may not even be around. They may have moved on from this market, and then you might be stuck with an issue and you don't know where to turn to. In our case, as a distributor, we wrap the full service together with the installer and, of course, the product mix that we offer, and we make sure that we can deliver that through consistently through this platform, and the end user, of course, is then supported through that journey. So I think ensuring that consistent client journey as part of our process is something that we focus on extremely hard. Ensuring the solutions are engineered and sized correctly. You don't want to overpay for something. You don't want to over engineer your solution, but you also don't want to spec it incorrectly that it can't grow. So you need software to start to assist in these designs, and that is how we have approached the market for our installers. We offer the solution to our installers who can then sell to their customers. Of course, it's also, as Deep said, quite an expensive purchase, so understanding the financial implications is very key. And of course, access to financial solutions can only be done once those financial implications and considerations are in place. We also like to understand what is deployed in our landscape. Of course, given that South Africa requires all of this solar PV to be installed, as well as storage, we are primarily a storage market. So the load shedding that has occurred in South Africa has driven most customers to put down batteries right up front with their solutions. So A, the solution is a little bit more complex in terms of engineering, and B, there's a whole bunch of deployed capacity out in the field, and we would like to know about that and of course look after it. And to do that, you need a CRM. You need to know what has been requested, which leads have gone through, and what has been supplied to them. And of course, we like to have an ability to communicate through that value chain with those customers. So ENACT offers a CRM inside of the software, which we wrap inside of our CRM, and we are able to talk and communicate properly. As stated, solar and storage solutions are really expensive. They are grudge purchases in South Africa. They're not things that people typically would have wanted to spend 300,000 Rand or 15,000 pounds on. So getting that ROI right is very important. In South Africa, we are also seeing 5-year payback periods, and sometimes in certain cases less. Given the energy utilities increasing tariff escalations, it's probably going to even be improved a little bit more. So the sizing is critical, and articulating that through to the customer correctly is critical. And an added bonus is, of course, measuring the performance. So knowing what was deployed into the customer's home or into the market, and actually tracking that performance through Engage, for example, in this case, the app that ENACT offers is an added bonus. Most end users would like to see what is going on, And of course, as an installer, you would probably also want to see what your fleet view looks like. So this brings myriad benefits to the market. If we sort of just talk about these four stakeholders, from a distributor perspective, it's obviously quite clear. We are able to ensure what is distributed into the market is a little bit at the high level, and it's obviously things that we are able to maintain. It's things that we're able to offer support for and warranty, and we're confident that the products are not going to fail, because that could be a dangerous exercise. Of course, for manufacturers, the same applies, where they can ensure that their product mix and the best of their product gets designed into the solutions and the proposals that go out to the customers through the platform. And that is something that we work closely with both the manufacturers and of course make sure that our installers are sizing and choosing the correct products. So for installers, it's a no-brainer. Having this ability just ramps up your capability very fast, enables you to fast turnaround times in terms of offering a proposal to your customers and make sure that you can actually deliver on what has been proposed. It helps us forecast for what we need to stock and where we need to stock it, make sure our logistics and our distribution facilities are in place to ensure that we can keep up with the demand, because we do have a sense of what is happening in the market. And of course, ultimately for an end user, when a distributor of our nature and our size is in the play, there's a sense of trust that we bring to the market. There's a sense of commitment from us in terms of warranties and support. And we're seeing that even the banking environment is really enjoying that from that perspective, and now comfortable enough to offer finance solutions to these end users, and possibly in certain cases to the installers, to get the projects off the ground, knowing full well that this has been very much a concierge service through these types of software platforms, with us as a distributor underpinning it in the South African context in any case.
Thank you, Michael. So that segues quite nicely onto my next question for you, Deep, which is precisely how do manufacturers benefit from ENACT software?
Yes, we have seen in the past, let's say going back to 10 years ago, the manufacturers, if you want to think of the main players, would be a panel company, of course, or an inverter company. And now, fast forward 2022, the big new category is battery companies. And so they all have their different needs. They have different warranties. What we are seeing is that the battery manufacturers are the most interested in getting the customer data, not just necessarily the battery itself, but how is that system put together, right? Because they don't know when they're shipping these batteries out through warehouses and ships, where it's going to end up, like brand X with which brand of inverter and what brand of panel, and how was the system designed and where it's going to go. They do not have that information, and that does impact the outcomes. So systems and platforms like ours really bring that data to manufacturers in terms of the use cases. And that's one driver why we have integrated with a lot of the battery companies in the US market, and doing that increasingly with others. And we even offering white labeled platforms to them. The other big thing we're seeing is inverter manufacturers. For us to succeed, we have partnered with inverter companies across the world, including all the large brands, and that gets us data back to them, not just, of course, for performance and warranty, but more importantly, the same reasons I said on the use cases. The customer experience is really important. We are seeing that the warranties for such systems are being serviced by installers who are not necessarily in business forever. And the end customer deserves, a quick response when they have a question or they have an issue. And we are offering that layer of responsiveness digitally down to the homeowner level, right? For complex topics, whether it's the financing issues or contractual issues, etc. So we are partnering with manufacturers, definitely a big role to play there.
Okay, thank you, Deep. So, similarly, what would you see as the benefits to installers then? You were very clear about the manufacturer benefits, but I think it'd be useful if you explain a bit more about the installer benefits as well, please.
Yes, absolutely. Some of the installer part, I know you have a question on the sales and ops teams, which I addressed before. I would say the other big benefit we bring to installers is to the owners. We have so many companies where the owner really comes to us and asks for a single place to see how their business is growing. where are the projects being proposed, which zip codes. Installation of solar is typically a local business, and it's very hard to scale. And so when owners try to go from one city to the other, even one zip code to the other, they have to plan better, right, on how to invest, whom to hire. And we're bringing that transparency in their business to be able to see what's going on in every corner of their business, being able to plan high resources and also plan expansions to better. That's really important for such companies to thrive and flourish. I would also say installers heavily benefit now through data we provide on insights on their business, and even down to at the project level, making predictions on pricing as well as OEM choices. There's a lot of data that's at one place now for their use.
Okay, Deep, thank you. And I suppose to complete the set, if you could explain a bit about the benefit to end customers as well, please.
Yes, I mean, then customers really the ultimate beneficiary for everything we've been talking about today, and everything we do, whether it's Michael's business or ours, right? The ultimate beneficiary is a happy homeowner, a business owner that has a good experience. They can purchase a system at the right price and have a worry-free ownership. And of course, the systems have to perform the way they were designed, which means if there's an outage, the battery does need to kick in exactly what was planned to be, right? And being able to track that on their app and measure the outcomes. So the end customer benefit is definitely the ultimate goal here for everybody, whether it's a manufacturer, distributor, or installer. And we're able to now finally track it for the first time. Solar has been around for a long time, and it's my 12th year solar, but we've not seen platforms that measure solar savings in dollars and cents. You'd be surprised. Until our platform, we haven't found one where it's a live tracking of the dollars and cents, adjusted for consumption, right? Adjusted for the electric rates every day, so live tracking. And we thought it's really important because if it's a $30,000 investment you make online on a stock trade or mutual fund, you get to see that, right? What's your ROI daily? Why wouldn't you want to see that on your solar system? So that's the transparency, the level of, let's say, transparency you're bringing to the market, of predictability and trust. So that's really the backbone.
Okay, thank you, Deep. So we've now reached a section where we're going to start getting into some audience questions. So this is a little reminder for everyone listening that you can submit those questions using the question tab on your screen. But first, I think I would just like to ask you, Deep, what are your kind of growth plans for the next, over the next 5 years for ENACT?
Thanks, Sean. We have been very structured in terms of how we grow the business. Obviously, we started in the US over 7 years ago and gradually expanded to a few international markets. Our whole basis for international has been partnerships. Rubicon has been our partner in South Africa. In fact, we were exclusive first in the initial years. And that has really helped both sides, right? Building a platform that helps their needs and grow that together. And so we have done similar partnerships in the United Arab Emirates and other parts of Asia now. And we have therefore launched the platform in India and Southeast Asia. And finally, we have customers in Europe, in Germany and UK as well. So we are in 20 plus countries. We want to keep doing the same strategy in 100 other countries. We're seeing growth of solar being double digit. If you look at the last 12 months, there are 50 countries we have found where the growth of distributed solar is now double digits and high double digits. So all of those countries, installers and distributors need similar platforms. So that's our plan.
Okay, thank you, Dee. And I know you just kind of listed a couple of them there, but if you can maybe pick apart a bit more about what you identify as key growth markets moving forward.
Yes, the US remains the #1 growth market for us, and unprecedented growth of solar and storage, especially on all the coastal markets. And we're opening up in new states like the Northeast this year. Outside the US, it's been Latin America, some select markets like Colombia, Mexico. We have customers now. In Europe, we're seeing, again, unprecedented demand for solar in Germany, and now even the UK, which we heard rumors about power cuts this winter after decades. So that's really a big pull for installers and tools to do more with less. And we're seeing growth there. In India, which is another huge market we service, we're seeing large companies now jump into the space. I mean, traditionally, solar has been driven by small and medium businesses, but in India, it's very different. We are seeing the largest corporates in the country launch solar businesses, and several of them use ENACT, and we're able to cater to their needs. And finally, we are seeing in the same trend in Southeast Asia, much smaller country markets, but overall, it's a very large region.
Okay, thank you for that, Deep. So I've got another question from the audience here, which is, do you make use of artificial intelligence in your software?
Yes, artificial intelligence is a term that's thrown around quite a lot, but the foundation of all of that is good data. And so just to kind of add some context here, I mean, until about 5 years ago, ENACT and a few other companies in this industry that we offer platforms, we found hardly less than 10% of installers used any software tools 5 years ago. And we used to have software summits in the country encouraging the use of software. Fast forward today, we are seeing that trend change, right? So more and more companies are using tools for design, automation, and monitoring, et cetera, which drives more and more data. And that data is helping us now analyze and make predictions. It's really the predictions that we make that will drive our artificial intelligence. The good news here is that that's really happening in a big way, whether it's sizing a system correctly or being able to estimate the benefits on an aggregate basis. For example, if you're a salesperson now that has done successfully in, pick a state, New York, and you want to expand to the next state, maybe it's Massachusetts, right? Well, ENACT really makes it easy for you, because when you're launching your business in another state, we have the data it takes to predict the outcomes. We can show you, a lot of different ways of pricing and sizing on an aggregate basis that helps that whole journey of learning and education. The other big trend we're seeing is the homeowners, right? So being able to understand their savings in dollars and cents is one bit, but now they're able to also see data on what can go wrong. For example, on a weather-adjusted basis, we can guide them on something being wrong with their system compared to their peers in their neighborhood if the system is underperforming, or if actually something might fail, we're seeing signs of that on the inverter data. So there's a lot of things we can do now with data which were not possible before, and that's, again, speeding up that adoption cycle.
Okay. Thank you, Deep. So another interesting one here from an audience member is, the presentation spoke a lot about residential solar, but what is the value to commercial projects of ENACT software?
ENACT is used across the world for both residential and commercial. We found a lot more commercial users on ENACT the last 5 years in the international markets, especially in Asia and even in South Africa. Michael can comment. So commercial has been really the backbone outside the US. But US for us is 80% residential. So we ended up doing both very well. We have customers doing both on the same platform. And we're seeing the trend in the US that a solar company kind of does both, although some are exclusively residential, some mix up commercial and residential. Because of the sales cycles on the commercial side, you can't really focus only on commercial alone successfully in the US. That's a little bit of an uncommon thing to see. But outside the US, we see 100% commercial businesses. Michael, you can take that one too.
Yeah, Michael, would you like to jump in with that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, absolutely on the commercial side, the design and engineering process is a little bit more complex. There's some targeted pricing that a lot of commercial deployments look for. And of course, the sizing of those systems is critical. The numbers start getting quite large. So you absolutely need this piece of software for that. And we are seeing a lot of our customers, installer customers, doing that for their commercial builds. We're actually doing a lot more on the commercial side with ENACT in terms of the proposals that are going out. Then on the residential side, residential for us has not been a big push just yet, but it's definitely starting to pick up. And that was driven largely by affordability in terms of residential solar. That is now starting to change, and we would see that we would push the residential designs and proposals a lot more with our installers now. But typically, a lot of commercial builds have been designed through this process. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you both for those answers. So we've got a question about storage here, which is a little confused, but I'm just going to rework. So how does storage fit into these systems, guys?
Sure, Michael, you want to take?
You want to start?
Sure. So storage and solar are paired successfully now in most markets. And of course, in the US, we're seeing batteries for residential systems really pick up. Commercial, not quite yet. It's happening, but we're talking a few hundred systems a year, commercial buildings. Residential is where we're talking hundreds of thousands of batteries being sold. And it's complex because you have to, of course, size them correctly in terms of how to design these systems, whether it's AC couple or DC couple. So there's some technical aspects of such sales, which we make easy now on ENACT. Also being able to predict the financial ROI. Batteries generally hurt the ROI. It's not the best. But then there are tax credits now on batteries sales and incentives to add to that. So being able to estimate those correctly and the customer trust being able to make sure they get what they are buying, that's really important, especially when you're spending $10,000, $20,000 now on adding batteries. So we enable that through ENACT. We are seeing the ownership aspects of batteries being challenging. So unlike panels that have 25-year warranties, batteries often have 5-year or 10-year warranties, and being able to deal with that and the cycles associated with that is important for customers. So we are trying to improve that customer ownership of batteries as well. Michael, over to you. I'm sure you can add more.
Yeah, thanks, Deep. Yeah, batteries is a critical component of the South African market in terms of the landscape. We are primarily a backup market. So to your earlier point around deploying just batteries, that is something that happens quite a lot in South Africa. So you'll just have your inverter and your backup storage. And that's primarily just to mitigate the inconvenience of these blackouts that we are seeing. You were sort of mentioning 6 hours last month. We're seeing upwards of 6 to 8 hours a day occurring on the severe stages of load shedding. So you can imagine how inconvenient that is for most homes. Typically that is going to be at a rolling stage. So you're going to have those 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Blackouts in your home. That's generally when most of the family is at home and homework needs to be done and things need to happen. So storage is a critical sale for us. If we sort of look at what is happening in other parts of the world, it may not have been as big a focus. For us, this has obviously been driven by the load shedding. I do wonder what the UK will look like in terms of potential blackouts as well. Having PV on your roof to mitigate your cost of energy is one thing, but not being able to actually run you and operate your home isn't going to help you in the middle of the night, unfortunately. So storage for us is a critical component, and not all storage is built the same. There's varying degrees of quality in terms of the cells that are used in different battery providers and manufacturers. The C rating of batteries is wildly different. The number of cycles that those batteries can actually perform at is quite different as well. So it's critical that those pieces of technology are effectively put forward in the best possible way. And of course, as a distributor, we do assist in procuring the best that we can for the markets in which we serve. And it must be engineered into the system so that you get those benefits that you're looking for. There's also going to be probably benefits coming through in terms of generating capacity, storing it during the solar hours, and then possibly consuming it instead of consuming the higher tariff rate, time of use tariff energy that the grid may provide. So that is what we're seeing as well in South Africa. For example, in my home, that is what I do. I charge up the batteries during the day, and in the evening, I consume that energy from the batteries to mitigate the cost of that energy in the evening. Yeah, so that's absolutely what we're seeing in South Africa.
Okay, thank you both. So I've got another question here from the audience, which is, can you discuss the monetization of carbon credits as mentioned on your slides? I don't know, Deep, do you want to take a stab at that?
Sure. So carbon credits, we do have CO2 emissions tracked on proposals that are being generated through ENACT, or even the end customer's outcome. We track the CO2 lifetime emissions and savings. But that's just the beginning. And I think there's a lot of new things coming on the carbon front, especially if you're living in Europe. There's a lot more regulation driving the tracking of carbon credits and the pricing of such credits. In the US, we are a little behind on that topic. And therefore, we are going to be spearheading such change where carbon is priced and being able to track the price of carbon savings through the platform. Michael, maybe over to you.
Yeah. So from a carbon credits perspective, it's not very well established in South Africa at this point. That is something that we are engaging with various stakeholders on. I think the US is obviously much further along in that space, but I do believe that that will be coming to South Africa very soon. We are seeing some of that already occurring in terms of taxes for various elements, and we'll be watching that very closely. Just in terms of, I did see a question coming through around the £15,000, which I was talking about for the residential solar, including storage. Yes, that would include storage. For us, that would probably you'd probably be seeing even upwards of a Tesla Powerwall at that price, with perhaps 5 kilowatts of solar PV on that. So yeah, that would include storage in that case. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, guys. So just to follow on for that monetization question, I mean, in both contexts, in the US, for you, Deep, and in Michael, in South Africa, who really benefits from that monetization of carbon credits? Do you want to start that one off?
Ultimately, the beneficiary of monetization is primarily the end customer. And today, if you look in America, an end customer that produces solar on the roof, most of them don't have the ability to monetize the carbon benefit, because it's very hard to aggregate every building and their benefits, right? And so there's a need for better regulation and transparency in pricing, so that even a small rooftop producer can monetize. And that's why corporates who need these carbon credits, they have to go chase huge forests and large carbon sequestration projects. But there's thousands of homes they can also start buying from. That market hasn't even started.
Okay. And Michael, in the South African context, how does that play out?
Yeah, I think, as I said, at this point, it's not well established in South Africa, but I echo what Deep is saying. I do believe that that is exactly who the beneficiaries will be. It is going to likely start kicking in, I think, as the pressure on the national grid, which a lot of it is coal-fired, it starts kicking in, and that PV starts coming online. There's going to be some effort to mitigate that. But at this stage, I can't really comment more on South Africa's landscape, because it's not really fully formed just yet.
Yeah, completely understand that. So just a much less mature market for that than there is in the US at the moment. Understood. Thank you, guys. So there's another question here, which is a bit more big picture, which is, can you talk a little more about regarding the visibility destination of batteries and modules and the benefit to manufacturers and the broader value chain?
Yes, so I think I touched some of that, right? Like, if you're a battery manufacturer, you want to know how your battery is actually commissioned. And today, they mostly do not know that until, in fact, I talked to one of the battery company CEOs. They said, we get to know about our batteries after the first warranty event happens, years into the ownership. And sometimes it's not, we find, implemented right in terms of sizing and loads. So yeah, there's a huge gap in the market. You're seeing manufacturers sprout up every week now in terms of new people entering the space, and they're shipping product, but we don't see their systems in place to track their performance, or real performance or system performance of the battery, because the battery is always paired with some other panel and some other inverter and other equipment. So that's one big opportunity. And I would also say the same holds true for some other pieces in that system. Definitely some inverter brands are behind on their digitization. But Michael, over to you.
Yeah, I think some of the other benefits that we're able to see is some of the new legislation that's kicked in around EPR. I'm not sure how established that is in the US market, but it is something that has reared its head in South Africa in the last sort of 6 to 12 months. So being able to track and understand what panels have gone out where is critical, given the long lifespans of some of the panels as well as the storage cells themselves. It is very important for us to be able to track what has happened all the way through from the manufacturer and all the way through to its final destination, and recovery of that potentially in terms of a recyclable material is very important. So we are doing work in that space. Again, having the right information as to where inventory was procured, as well as where it was sold, is critical to be able to do this end-to-end chain. And these are really long time frames that we're talking about, but EPR is definitely being levied against all of the products that we are importing and selling through, and it's something that we keep a very close eye on as well. So it's vital to this element of software for us.
Okay, thank you, guys. So I'm just wondering, in terms of understanding behavior and customer usage, I mean, how valuable is that in terms of product development plans?
It is invaluable, right? I mean, we are seeing the solar movement started, let's say, 2 decades ago, right? When panel companies were developing, and now it's a very mature business. Batteries are like solar 10 years ago. And there's so many different use cases that are coming up. Like one I just was talking about earlier, batteries for charging your EV, right? Especially you're in an apartment in America and you don't have your charger yet. And some of them don't have the approved loads in dense urban areas. You need to have batteries now to charge the EV faster and not, wait for forever. But then those have different performance attributes than the typical home battery that's waiting for an outage all year long. So there's a lot of different use cases that have not yet been uncovered, and the volumes are low. But as the market grows, those use cases need to be understood, and that's how manufacturers need to design products. And every manufacturer can't go home to home and sell every system, right? So you need platforms and partnerships so that we can use the data and benefit from that.
Okay, so again, linking back to what you were saying earlier about data and its value, then, Deep.
Absolutely.
Michael, do you want to jump in there, or do you think Deep covered it all?
Yeah, I think Deep's covered it for sure.
Okay, great. So I've got another interesting question here from an installer, I assume, and they're wondering how the software platform is funded. Deep, I think probably on for you.
Yeah, so you mean the pricing. So we do have ENACT's platform pricing on our website. So installers in America, they're able to go and sign up and even across the world and pay on a credit card on a monthly user price basis. It's very transparent. We have discounts linked to volume of such users. But when we go into large partnerships like we have done with Rubicon, we're also enabling partners to price and sell the platform and their markets in their own way. And maybe, Michael, you can shed some light on how you've done it innovatively in South Africa.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so exactly as you've said, Deep, we've procured the licenses from ENACT. In our case, we buy them in batches. And in order to accelerate the adoption of this technology and, of course, attempt to raise the bar for all installers and partners in this ecosystem, we actually offer these pieces of technology free to our installers in our case. Of course, it's critical that is understood that as just our method of doing it. I'm not really sure what the rest of the world is doing. In our case, we procure the licenses and we give them to our premium installers. These are installers that work well with us, that understand that one bad solution or one bad set of solutions that go out into the market is detrimental to the whole ecosystem. So they work very closely with us, and we offer them the benefit by adding this piece of software to their set of tools that they have when they engage customers, even so much so that we even share leads with them. So when end users come to us directly, being B2B primarily, we, of course, hand them on through the ENACT platform to the installers, and then they actually take charge of that. So it's really a win-win situation. We, of course, get to distribute the products that we want to distribute, and that is where our target market in terms of our revenue market falls. And then the installers get to get a qualified lead, and they get to deploy the solution set into that market with this tool without it necessarily hurting their pockets in this case.
Okay, thank you both. So in terms of O&M, this is another question coming from an audience member. What diagnostic capabilities does the platform offer, and what are the benefits of those?
So I'll take that one. Sean, you mentioned O&M. So we did a statewide survey, and we'll publish this soon in California, where hundreds of homeowners were surveyed, and the ownership experience of solar. And surprisingly, over 40% of such people said they have an O&M issue. So they have a maintenance problem on their system in the last 2 years. And that has not been addressed by their provider. And the provider, of course, could be a small installer or a larger one. And one of the barriers we see is good data on what actually happened, what went wrong. Obviously, there's monitoring systems that are abundantly available, and the inverter companies have really innovated on that. So there's no lack of data. What's lacking is analysis, right? That's what we focus on, identifying what really happened, what was the failure cause, and therefore being able to alert the right person, whether it's the manufacturer, the installer, or the homeowner, on time, and not having them to wait. So big opportunity to innovate O&M for distributed systems, for storage and solar. And we are just starting that journey, I think. Michael, I'm curious about your thoughts also in South Africa.
Yeah, I think the O&M conversation really kicks in when there's financing providers wanting to offer finance for these solutions. The ones that we have engaged with in terms of them wanting to offer solutions to their customers, their customer book, one of the requirements for them is that there's some kind of O&M schedule that is built in, and of course we can do that in terms of ENACT. There's something that we can put into the build and make sure that the BOM reflects that. So O&M is definitely starting to become a critical component. I do feel that when solutions are sold through just a standalone installer, somebody that is in the business and they're going forward to propose to customers, those types of costs are dropped off, because it's they're concerned about what they're going to end up with a final price for the customer, and they're actually selling a subpar solution, so they know that they're going to be having to go back to site to look after the solution constantly. I think there's a confidence that comes through when O&M is included, because people then say, well, you're confident enough that you can meet this O&M schedule because the technology that has been put in and the design that has been done through the engineering team that is using the platform is confident that that is all that is required to look after the system. So we're seeing that the banking environment, the financial institutions are really looking for that. They are now at a level of trust where they are willing to finance and put money forward. That was not the case in South Africa just a few short years ago, probably even so far, but a year ago or so, it wasn't even really possible. But now we are seeing financial instruments coming through that are offering this to your customers. So you'll log into your bank account as a homeowner, and there will be an offer to you around, do you want to put in a solar solution? You are eligible for X, and it'll be procured through this partner, etc. So O&M is a critical component. It does bring the element of trust through to the customer, and if you are able to offer that correctly, I think it goes a long way to establish that trust.
Thank you very much, guys. So unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. This is a little reminder to everyone listening that the webinar will be available on demand shortly via PV Tech. Just like to say a big thank you to both Deep and Michael, and indeed our audience, for your attention. The next PV Tech TechTalk webinar will be tomorrow, but there are more details of that on PV Tech. But again, thank you very much for both of you for presenting. I found it really interesting, and I hope to see you all next time.